Thank you, Zimbabwe, for tuning into yet another informative edition of your program. This is Agriculture in New Directions, Agribusiness, and I am Wadzanai Manyore. So this is a platform where we discuss business ethics and business principles and their application in the agricultural industry as we forge our way towards achieving Vision 2030 as a country. Now, in this particular episode, we have taken the liberty of inviting Mr. Paul Zakariya. He is the director of the Zimbabwe Farmers Union right here in Zimbabwe. Mr. Zakariya, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes. Now, as I've alluded to earlier, this platform mainly focuses on the application of business principles and ethics in the agricultural industry because Zimbabwe is an agro-based economy where our value chains and our industries are heavily reliant on agricultural produce. Now, as we get into our episode, we want to talk about the farming business environment. It comes with loan acquisition, it comes with loan repayment, or some might want to call it debt recovery. Now, as we get into our discussion, maybe a brief synopsis of the farming business environment at the moment. What does it look like? What's in there for both the farmers and the various stakeholders?
Well, thank you so much. There is a history that we need to acknowledge when we talk about agriculture in Zimbabwe in 2020. There is a history that dates back to pre-independence, where the agricultural space was dominated by a minority, and that minority managed to acquire and secure funding back in the years, and then they developed their infrastructure. And the smallholder farmers in particular they were not anywhere near that. And then we move a little bit after independence. We still had a similar setup, but a few black people coming into agricultural production. And then there were no serious successes that were recorded, apart from a slight increase in the volumes of produce that were coming through. But the cash crops were dominated by the minority. And then after the year 2000, some dynamics changed. The terrain just changed immediately. Land was now shifting from the minority to the majority. And of course, because of those adjustments, a lot of things got a bit disturbed.
Okay.
And now we are at a point, this is the era that we are living in, where we are seeing a recovery, so to speak, of the agricultural industry in Zimbabwe, with our black people owning the land and our black people beginning to have a relationship on the marketplace in the agricultural space, as it were. So, is it profitable at the moment? In most cases, the answer is no.
Okay.
Are we doing very well at the moment? Yes, only because it is promising.
Okay.
The potential is huge, and we can actually do quite a lot. Zimbabwe, like you alluded earlier on, is an agri-based economy. And if we do well in agriculture, then all the other sectors will begin to kick immediately. So we need to get to that point.
Okay, that was very informative, Mr. Zakariya. And I like that you alluded to the fact that we are riding on potential. It might not look very profitable at the moment, but the fact is there is potential in agriculture. It can be our flagship as Zimbabwe, to be known once again as the breadbasket of Africa. Now the rainy season is upon us, and that is where most of our Zimbabwean farmers want to think of loan acquisition. That is where they run around, they go to tobacco merchants. You see, even if you go to our financiers, our local banks, there are farmers there looking for capital in the form of either inputs or equipment or money or cash to fund their agricultural enterprises, mainly cropping. Now let us talk about loan acquisition. What does it entail? The farmer is going out there to look for money, for capital to fund his project or his enterprise. And there is also the financier out there who's saying, okay, I'm going to fund you. But what's in it for him? So let's go back and talk about loan acquisition. What does it mean to all the stakeholders involved?
In agriculture, timing is of essence. If the rains are already falling, if one is running around now looking for money, there is a big problem.
Okay.
So we need to be entrepreneurs, we need to be business people, business minded. So what it means is that we would have done the financing arrangements well ahead of the season, right? So that when the rains, the first effective rains fall, we are already planting. So this is not the time, just for starters, this is not the time to be looking for money.
Okay.
We should have done that 4 or 5 months ago.
Okay.
So as farmers, there is need for us to have clear plans, yeah, and where we should also be able to say, where is the dollar sign in what we are going to be doing? So we want to be prepared and get in there, because it is a small window.
Okay.
When we have the rains, and when we have effective rains, we plant, and then right through the cycle, we harvest. You cannot do that beyond that window. So it is very important. Now, back to the issue of financing, and in fact, looking around for who can, lend me money.
Some money.
It's very important that we have our cropping programs ready. We need to know what we are going to produce. What is the market saying, so that we produce for the market? So we do our market analysis, and then we work backwards, produce for a market. Never produce anything that has no market.
Okay.
Right? Now, you want to know exactly how many components go into production in terms of the inputs. Do you need the seed, the fertilizers, the fuels, the chemicals, and name it? And then what's the labor going to be like, and various other things. So you have your cropping budget in place. And it is the cropping budget that then informs how much you are going to borrow from a financial institution.
Okay.
So that you are not just going there and saying, in this season, I need so much, an X amount of money. So it has to be informed by what you can do practically on the ground, and by also what you have put on paper as a plan.
Okay.
And it is at that point that the financial institution will then also want to assess, to verify that these things are actually on the ground, and that you also, beyond that, you have the soft skills that will help you to manage the enterprise. Do you have a qualified person who is going to oversee the crop management, who is going to oversee the enterprises? Some of them are livestock, and so on. Do you have enough water? You can borrow a lot of money, but you cannot perform miracles if you don't have water in agriculture. Yeah. Moisture is important.
Yes.
Do you have the land itself? What is the nature of the instruments that are conveying access to that land? Are you going to be threatened with removal in between the season, when you have already lost a lot of money? So those are some of the critical things. And then the markets, of course. Do we have off-taker agreements to guarantee that if you borrow from me, you will be able to pay, because market will pay so much, and it will be able to clear off the loan and leave you with a margin in terms of profits.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zakariya. That was very precise. On that note of market intelligence and being able to foresee or foretell where you are going to send your produce, we are going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the second segment of your program. Stay tuned. Welcome back, viewers. We are in the second segment of your program, Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness, and I am Wadzanai. Now, viewers, we encourage you to be a part of these conversations. Feel free to get in touch with me, the producer, Wadzanai Manyore, on 0772-807-506. Alternatively, you can like our Facebook page, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. You can also make a follow-up on this episode and more, and leave your comments and suggestions on our YouTube channel, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. We are also on Twitter, and our Twitter handle there is at Agribusiness 110. Now, earlier on, before we went to the break, Mr. Zakariya here was telling us of market intelligence and how it helps a farmer when it comes to loan repayment. Mr. Zakariya, we are in the second segment of our program. Welcome back.
Thank you so much.
As we get into our discussion, I want us to talk about one pertinent principle in agribusiness, the time value of money. People talk about it in business finance and in various spheres of business, but when it comes to farming, what does the time value of money as a principle mean to a farmer or to a financier?
This is a very important point that you are raising here. Borrowed money or money coming from the markets. We need our financial institutions to work, and we also need our markets to perform. Because a farmer accesses funds from a financial institution.
Yes.
And if the funds delay in coming, that delays the whole chain in terms of production mechanisms. And that also affects the yields and quality and every other thing. And if, on the other hand, the markets do not perform, I deliver 10 tons of maize to a market today, and then 2 months down the road, the market hasn't performed. That disturbs everything in terms of my plans for the next crop.
Yes.
And if we are in an environment where, which is not very stable in terms of the currency, then it also means that I've lost value over 2 months. The money, if I was indexing against a stronger currency, the money would have been eroded in value. So in other words, the things that I could buy today, I'm not able to buy 2 months later.
Yes.
So I would have lost out. So as a farmer, we want to make sure that our sources of finance, they perform. And these sources of finance are, if I'm borrowing, the financial institution, and if I am selling my produce, it is the markets. So markets must work. Financial institutions must cooperate.
Okay.
So that the burden, the financial burden on the farmer is lessened.
Okay, as we move forward again, that was very detailed. You're talking of a mutualistic understanding between the farmer and the financier, which is very important, so that these people will be able to understand that he is looking for this and this person is also looking for that. Then you translate that into money, into monetary value. Let us talk about the ZAMCO policy document. It has been of topical issues in the farming community. We have some farmers who borrowed money dating back to maybe 2008, 2009. They used their homes as collateral. They moved from Mayborough to locate to Karoi. They used their home, their title deeds as collateral. And given that farming is risky, many were relying on rain-fed agriculture without irrigation equipment. They couldn't make it. They couldn't repay their debt. Where does the ZAMCO policy document fit in all of this? And maybe what does it stand for?
Our understanding of ZAMCO and the debt assumption issues is in that not all non-performing loans, not all of them are irredeemable.
Okay.
There are some, for some various reasons, that are definitely going to be resuscitated, given life again.
Okay.
Businesses may have gone under for different reasons, and some of the reasons could be, they just failed in terms of timing.
Okay.
And then they lost out maybe in terms of a consignment. But if they were to be given an opportunity to play back, they would avoid some of the mistakes that they made, So the ZAMCO is definitely not an opportunity for one to get their non-performing loan in a commercial bank to be written off.
Okay.
It is not, that is not the understanding. The understanding is ZAMCO itself has the power to acquire, to reschedule, the power to dispose of, to hold, the power to manage, and otherwise settle the non-performing loan in one way or another.
Okay.
So in other words, the financial institution who was holding an NPL did not lose out completely, because ZAMCO is going to assist it by way of trying to resuscitate the operations
Okay.
and build the capacity to repay.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the understanding that we have.
Now, for our audience there at home, I understand that farming is a business. There are calls from our ministry are saying production, enhancement of productivity. Maybe your sentiments on the current state of affairs in the agricultural industry. You represent farmers. Farmers have their concerns, financiers have their concerns. Of late, people are saying that the interest of farming loans, why are they double digit? In some countries, they have subsidies. Why are we the ones, to have maybe a percentage of a loan being charged at 15% or 12%? What does it mean? And maybe a brief background on that so that our farming community can understand where the financiers derive or determine that percentage, that interest. How do they come up with 15% or 20%? Where does it come from?
Well, it is indeed quite a matrix. The source of funds to begin with, who is funding the bank, where are they getting their funds from that they are going to outlay. If it is depositors' funds, clearly these are short-term funds. And if you are to borrow from a bank which is only outlaying depositors' funds, you definitely will not finance anything in the medium to long term.
Okay.
So these are very short, tenured facilities. Our farmers need to understand that they should intentionally look for information, intentionally go for training. Financial literacy is very important because we are business people. We need to have a relationship with money.
Yes.
If we do not understand what money is, we will always think that a loan, a donation, whatever,
a subsidy.
They are a subsidy. They are all the same.
Yes.
These are totally different. And we should also know when to borrow, when not to borrow. How do we understand the dynamics around, the operations, such that should we choose we borrow, or should we choose we use own funds?
Okay.
Sometimes it's better off going without a loan.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Zakariya. On that note of financial literacy and training, we are going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the third and final segment of your program. Stay tuned. Welcome back, viewers. You are watching Agricultural New Directions. We are in the third and final segment of your program, and I am here with the Director, Zimbabwe Farmers Union, Mr. Paul Zakariya. We are in the third and final segment of our program, and we were basically talking about financial literacy earlier on. Now, as we round off this segment, is it possible to have sustainable financing systems in agriculture in Zimbabwe? Is it attainable? And what does it mean if we say sustainable financing systems? What does it mean to the farmer or to the financial institution? What does it entail?
Basically, it speaks to the issues of stability, predictability, one being able to plan.
Okay.
And sustainable financial or funding systems is also looking at sources that will not dry because of changes or shocks in the environment. So it's sustainable as you go. Now, value chain financing is one such key element in terms of funding agriculture.
Okay.
We need to be looking at who requires what product, and are they able to finance that product? If they can finance that product, who can grow that product for them? And therefore, what are the support mechanisms that we need to put around that in terms of insurance, in terms of extension, in terms of the off-takers? So it's a whole, ecosystem that should be able to work. Yeah. So that once the input suppliers, they have the comfort, the financial institution has the comfort, the farmer has the comfort, the market has the comfort, and all these other support systems in between, they can also play ball. So it is very important that at the level of policy, we bring down policies that encourage the crowding in of private sector.
Okay.
Because we do believe that private sector has such opportunities to access, finance that can then be wound around, certain commodities.
Okay.
And secondly, we can talk about outgrower schemes. For instance, a big corporation that is producing your potato crisps, their job is to produce potato crisps, but they don't have the crisping potato.
Yes.
So they require now outgrowers who can grow for them, right? So this is a huge institution that can borrow money and then outlay to farmers, and that in itself is sustainable because we need the potato crisps. The market is there, the off-takers are there, but we need the producers so that the manufacturer can do what they... So this is very sustainable in nature, as opposed to once-off interventions.
Okay.
A once-off intervention is not a very sustainable way of finding agriculture.
Most of our farmers out there, they have a feeling of kutsotswa. They feel like we are being used, we are being abused, we are providing such and such to our country. As Zimbabwe Farmers Union, what are your words of encouragement, or what are your sentiments on that? Is it true that our farmers are being robbed in daylight, especially if you look at issues surrounding our tobacco industry? Sometimes there are issues that arise with the merchants and the farmer. If you look at certain sectors in the agriculture industry, the farmers appear to be very disadvantaged. What is the cause of that? What is your position? What are your comments, your sentiments on that?
When you are talking about, I hope this is referring to contract farming.
Yes,
in particular.
yes.
So in contract farming, I would admit and acknowledge the fact that there is a lot of short-changing that goes on in there. It's not just the companies that are contracting that short change. It's also sometimes the farmers, because the playing field is not balanced.
It's not even.
It's not even, where there is a lot of side marketing also on the part of the farmers. But bringing these things together, you will see that it is important for the farmers to understand the contracts themselves before they put ink to paper.
Okay.
Because in most cases, it's in the small print that our farmers then begin to cry later that we have been shortchanged. So we need to have these contracts well explained to our farmers, and the farmers should understand the contracts. And the element of mistrust that is normally there between the contractor and the grower can be cleared out immediately when the contracts are explained, and when the farmers get that kind of an appreciation of what they are getting into. But we have actually seen that in most cases where these contracts are not very clear, a farmer may actually be contracted, given inputs, a whole bag of fertilizer at the market value, say, of $34.
Yes.
But then when the contractor recovers their money for the inputs, for the fertilizer, at the end of the season, they're actually picking anything around $50 to $60 for the same bag which they gave at $34. So this is where you will see that farmers begin to say,
there are issues.
There are serious issues when it comes to that. So the mistrust can actually be cleared by explaining things and by farmers appreciating what these contracts are all about. Okay.
We have come to the end of our episode, Mr. Zakariya. Your word of advice to our farming community as the director of Zimbabwe Farmers Union, your recommendations to our policymakers, or even the various stakeholders in the agriculture industry. We talked of the contractors, the merchants, those who want to sponsor various activities. Your recommendations to them.
To the farmers, my colleagues in the farming community, it is very important, it is critical actually, that we begin to exercise our minds in a way that allows us to see our operations as businesses. They indeed are businesses. We will make losses if we do not appreciate the difference between costs and what the market the proceeds from the markets.
Okay.
If we don't appreciate that we spend a lot of money to earn just a little bit, if we don't understand that bit, we are totally out of business. So it is very critical that farmers, we understand that we are in business. And let's look for information.
Okay.
Let's demand information and demand services. And beyond that, let's go for training.
Okay.
Let's be trained. We don't know it all. If we don't have certain skills, if we can't hire, let's go out and be trained, attend a workshop, attend a seminar, go for field days and things like that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zakariya. It was a pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you so much.
There you heard it, viewers. We're talking of a sustainable ecosystem in agriculture where we have the private sector and even the farmers, the various stakeholders coming together to push the agenda of production as we head towards achieving Vision 2030 as a country. From me, your host, Wadzanai Manyore, and the crew behind the scenes, have yourselves a fabulous evening. Thank you for watching.